Hello, everyone. Welcome to another ClickMeetng webinar. Thank you for joining our event. And before we move on, please let me know if you can hear and see us. Please type your answers in the chat window now. Sorry. I can see that everything is okay. Yeah. So my name is Tomasz Bolcun, and I work for ClickMeetng company as a brand manager, and I will be your host today. But guess what? I'm not the essential person today here because Malva Gasowski is with us.
Hi, everyone.
Hello,
Lovely to see
Malva.
you. Hi.
So, what are you going to present during today's webinar? What will be the topic?
Effective webinars in business and education as a whole, but we're going to be very specific in the technicalities of what webinars are and how we can use them for the benefit of our business. And if our business is teaching, then for the benefit of teaching others as well.
Okay, sounds exciting to me. But before I leave you in the webinar room, I will give some information about today's event. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded. And yes, everyone is going to get recording, and it will be sent to the email accounts you used to register for this webinar. So it's very important information for all of you, I think. And the whole webinar is planned for about 1.5 hours. And the last part of the webinar is planned for Q&A session. So if you have any questions, just keep them in mind and wait for the Q&A session. And it's worth to stay until the end of the webinar, because for those who don't have ClickMeetng account yet, we have prepared discount code. So wait till the end of the webinar. And yeah, so I won't keep you waiting. The webinar floor is yours, Malva. I will be disappearing now, and I'll be active on the chat now.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the support. Hi,
Okay.
everyone. I'm super excited that you're here. We have people from Greece and from Germany. I'm reading the chat and I'm excited to see that we're worldwide. Today's webinar is quite interesting. I'm a passionate person, meaning I love the things that I teach. And every time that I teach them, I expect my clients to fall in love in the topic that I'm presenting. So I'm hoping that that little goal that I have for myself today is going to be effective. And from Poland, Katarzyna, oh, lovely. All right. So I'm going to be a little bit more specific with the topic. So the effective uses of webinar in today's world for online entrepreneurship and education. Why are we being so specific? Well, number one, today's world is a little bit different than it was a few years ago. And today's world is very keen on organization, segregating knowledge, and making sure that everybody has their niche, everybody has their business partner, everybody has their mentor. And because the world is so diverse, you can't be everywhere at the same time. Although ClickMeetng makes it easier, and so does the internet, we need to be very specific in what we're doing and who we're talking to. Hence the word today's world. Why online entrepreneurship? Because being an entrepreneur, being a businessman or a businesswoman in the world of brick and mortar is completely different than being in the online world. Webinars are one of the tools that online entrepreneurs use in order to promote and to sell their products and or service. Why education? Well, first of all, right now, most students have had at least one online lesson, which means that we as educators need to also have the key and the knowledge to know how to provide our expertise online. And although we are maybe not selling it in a monetary value, we do need to know how to sell our idea so the people stay with us till the end, so the people listen to us, so the people, maybe even if we're lucky after a webinar, they can apply some of the knowledge that we are sharing with them. Hence, the effective usage of webinar in today's world of online entrepreneurship and education. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the difference between online lectures, meetings, and are they all webinars or not? I hope you automatically answered they're not, but we'll get to the details. Then if not online lectures and meetings, if they're not webinars, then what are webinars? When to use webinars in your business and your education endeavor, because maybe you're not ready, maybe your audience is not ready, and how do we assess when they are ready? Okay, let's see how we can use that. Can webinars be an effective selling tactic? By selling, once again, don't think that, well, I'm not selling, there's no monetary exchange, then this bit of element is not for me. No, selling, this is what I'm doing today. Although there's no monetary exchange, I am selling myself to you, selling my ideas, selling my knowledge in order to engage you in actively participating or actively listening. Hence, I'm selling my idea through a webinar to you. Yes, about webinars, but I still need to make sure that I am very convincing in what I'm saying. Therefore, these are just one of the things that we need to take into account when we say, can webinars be an effective selling tactic? All right, a few more things, more technical. How to prepare a webinar, how to structure a webinar, and what to do after the webinar to nurture our clients and or students. A webinar is just the beginning. It's the tip of an iceberg of a whole strategy that needs to be planned out, written out, and executed in an effective manner in order for the webinar to be effective as a business endeavor. As an education endeavor, we need to know that we're able to either assess or gauge how the people that attended our educational webinar acquired the knowledge and how they're using it. Okay? And if they're engaging with us in conversation after the webinar, to make sure that we're keeping them in the loop of the knowledge and in the loop of our area of expertise so they can always return to us. So these are all the topics we're going to discuss today. Should you have any questions, you can do one of two things. You can always write them in the chat so you don't forget. Or you can write them on a sheet of paper, and then when it's Q&A, you're more than welcome to write it in the chat. Why did I say that I'm not going to answer questions during the webinar? Is because sometimes I answer them while I'm conducting the webinar. Hence, I won't need to answer the same thing just at random. But the Q&A questions will be an MAA, which means ask me anything about webinars, and I'm more than happy to answer. All right, a few words about me. Why should you listen to me? Well, I'm an educator. I've been in the education industry for over 27 years, I've counted recently. I've been a trainer and an online trainer with online pedagogy for a few years, a consultant to people who want to show up in the online world with either presentations and webinars like today, or how to get their area of expertise online to sell as courses. I'm also a coach and a project manager, so making sure that grant organizations that have to migrate their membership migrations, or they have to migrate their courses, or they have to run summits, they just turn to me and I make it all happen online. I always say I make the difficult look easy in my line of work, and that's exactly what I do. Why do I do all these things together? Because they're all surrounded with love and love for education and lifelong learning. And last but not least, I'm a mom of 3. So I always say, if you think you're busy and you don't have time, give it to a mom of 3. She'll know how to organize it. So if you've got a knack for organization and for education, I invite you to my world to join me and learn a few tricks and tips. The people that have trusted me so far are just a few here. ClickMeetng is my business partner for, goodness me, I think 5 years now, and I can't imagine running business meetings as well as training sessions anywhere else. I said it at the very beginning. If I have a choice, my choice is ClickMeetng, because it gives me a lot of freedom and engagement possibilities for my friends. So these are the companies that trust me, hoping you're going to trust me too and stay with me till the end. All right, let's continue. Know your audience. So tip number 1, And one of the most important tips, no matter where we are, you should know your audience. And it is quite difficult to know your audience, just like I have a vast number of people listening to me here. And although, unfortunately, I can't know all of you personally, although I would love to have an introduction and then continue working with you, this is a webinar, so I can't know you. So how am I going to know you? Well, first of all, you guys said hi, which is great. I already know that you're active. You're able to write something in the chat. I know where you're from. Some of you wrote that you're from Poland, you're from Greece, you're from Germany, which is amazing. Looking at the names, somewhere quite further away to where I am. And you know what? The fact that I made sure that the topic of the webinar said specifically who this webinar is for business and education. So I am assuming if you read this title, you are in one of these two categories, which tells me that these are the examples of the way of using webinars that I need to give you today, right? I won't give you examples of webinars in, let's say, corporate setting for communication only, because this is not business and education. These are two different things. So knowing your audience and making sure that you know what they need is something that is essential in making sure that a webinar is an engaged way of getting in touch with your ideal client. Okay? So if you don't know how to do that, title, ask questions, and make sure that if you have a description of the webinar that is very specific, let's say to the beauty industry, make sure that you add that. If your webinar is very specific to, let's say, insurance, travel insurance, make sure that you add that in the webinar description or subtitle so that people who are, and from Vienna, awesome, lovely to see that. We've got also people from Vienna. Make sure that you add all of that into your description. So the people signing up, if you are just signing up and getting people from the online space, you know exactly who you're speaking to. If you know your students and know what they want, it's always good to give them examples of what is their life specific. For example, if you are talking about math to a teenager, make sure that you show them where in their life specifically they can use this function of math to make their life easier to solve their problems. Just like I'm going to tell you how to use webinars to potentially solve the problems that you have, the overwhelm of webinars being everything and nothing. And how do I make sure that I structure them and organize them and know which to choose and pick? Okay, so let's continue. I think I know a tiny bit about you, which is great. If you want to write more things about you, like for example, where are you from? Are you from education or from the business sector? In the chat below, then that would be lovely. I'll have a chance to see where you're from while I continue. Okay, so are all online lectures or meetings webinars? You can see by my face that I'm going to say, no, they're not. Online meetings are something completely different. So an online meeting is a virtual gathering. Full stop. Nothing more. An online meeting is nothing but the possibility to gather with another person virtually. What does virtually mean? Well, through the internet, using platforms like ClickMeetng, for example. That is the definition of an online meeting. Yes, there can be abundance of different kinds. Anything from FaceTiming grandparents. See, the child is calling their grandma, saying, "Hi, grandma." That's an online meeting. Yes, personal, but it still is. Okay? Chit-chatting with your friend, grabbing a cup of coffee. Hey, you know what? I'm feeling down today. Can we have a girls' chat? Let's grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. That's an online meeting. Lessons with your teachers. That is also an online meeting. Accountability groups that are online. That's an online meeting. And working with people remotely. Let's say some people work in the office and some are remote. Those are online meetings. Technically, they can be as informal or as formal as you want. But they are a vast group of virtual gatherings without necessarily a goal. Because if we're calling grandma, yes, our goal may be saying happy birthday, but these are just the words that we're uttering. but there's no specific business or education goal in there. So saying that I'm just organizing a meeting and then having a salesy webinar is not going to fly in the business world, okay? Or organizing a educational meeting and then just having chit chat with your students as if they're your friends, that's not going to fly either. So whenever you are organizing an online meeting, so a virtual gathering, make sure that you are very specific. What exactly is it that you're going to do? If we're just meeting to be accountable for the work that we need to do, great. If we're meeting to just hang out and just to chit chat, great. If we have work to do, then let's be more specific. Today's meeting is not about online meetings, but I will just say those few words to make sure that you understand that online meetings can also be well organized. Then, what's the difference between online meetings and online lectures? An online lecture is a virtual, sometimes on-demand class on a specific topic. Okay, the word class in this section, in this situation, or in this context, means a part of knowledge that I, as the lecturer, need to give you. It can be on demand, so whenever you wish, you can click and listen to it. But I have to have a lesson structure in this webinar. In this lecture, meaning there should be a beginning, there should be the middle, so the meat of the lecture, and there should be an end and an assignment to those people. And this, no matter when they join me, can be applicable. Online lectures are knowledge that you can use today or in the future, not necessarily knowledge that you could have learned in the past. Yes, history can also be an online lecture, but I'm hoping that you're able, as an online lecturer, take the knowledge from the past and show people how they can use it in the future. So what is the difference between online meeting and lectures? As you can see, an online meeting was a two-way street. People had the possibility to talk with you. There wasn't a structure. There wasn't a specific educational element of online meetings. An online lecture is something that you're either paying for, or your resource is your time. You're going there and you know that you're going to come out with a piece of knowledge. That is an online lecture. Then what is a webinar? A webinar is a live or recorded online education presentation with a purpose. Participating viewers can submit questions and/or comments. And to be more specific, webinars have a vast way of picking and choosing your own adventure. Let me explain. I'm going to divide webinars and categorize them into two elements: the thematic webinars and the technical ones. Why so? Well, you have 6 thematic ways of running webinars and 6 technical ways of running webinars. So if my math is correct, 6 times 6 is 36. You have 36 possibilities of individually running the webinars. Plus, I can multiply that by choosing and adding the different elements to make a webinar your own. So, for example, today's webinar is going to be dissected after I introduce all the 6 thematic and the technical elements of running a webinar, so you can see what I mean, that you can choose and pick your own adventure. Let's start with 6 definitions of the technical elements of webinars. You can have one presenter, like you have here, yours truly, 2 presenters, so you would have 2 people sitting in front of you, sharing their knowledge, how to do that, how to interchange, how to make sure that both are a valuable part of the webinar. These are skills that you would need to learn and you would need to read upon if this is the path that you want to run your webinars on. Discussion panel, Q&A form or MAA, ask me anything, interview, and case study. Those are the 6 ways that we can run webinars from the technical element. Okay, why do I say technical? Because I'm not talking about what you're telling the people, what you're teaching them in your business or in your education. I'm telling you how you're doing it. And there's a vast difference of skills that you need to possess as an online presenter if you're presenting by yourself, because maybe you're not as lucky as I am today that I have technical background, the backup. Sometimes I don't. And there's a different set of skills that you need to have if you are presenting in two. There's a completely different set of skills that you need to have if you are the host of a discussion panel, because not only must you be in full control of what is happening in the online space, you also need to be in control of the topic, the theme, the time, while you're asking questions to the panel of experts that you have in front of you. A completely different set of skills. So let's talk about the one presenter. A one presenter will be one expert that shares their insights or their tips with the audience. Okay? As a one presenter, you need to know how to position yourself as an expert in the area that you are talking about. You'll need to know how to make sure that you align online and that the way that you're presenting your knowledge is, let's say, true and authentic, and people buy it. If they don't, you've lost in this little game of online webinar. So make sure that if you've ever thought of being a one-person presenter in a webinar, you know your stuff. Two presenters. Again, being two presenters is different because all the skills that you need to possess to run a webinar as one presenter, you need to add upon that elements of organization in the back and making sure that the show must go on no matter what. Okay. If you can ever imagine a theater play, a lot of the things are happening in the background that the audience doesn't see. And if one actor messes up, another actor can't say, "What are you talking about? This is not what we planned." The other actor just has to play along, even if the lines got mixed up. Even if something is not happening. If you've ever watched the Oscars, how they hosted the Oscars, you can see that they've got prompts. They know when to speak. They know when to stand. They know when to come up to the microphone and when not to. These are exactly similar or the same skills that you need to possess in order to run a webinar with two presenters. Okay? These presenters are not technical and expert. No. Both of them are experts and they both have knowledge that they're going to share with the audience. Okay, so make sure that both of them know how to sell their area of expertise and engage and educate the audience that they're speaking to. All right, discussion panel. You are a host that orchestrates a group of experts discussing a specific topic. These skills are not only one presenters and one presentation skills. You need to know how to present yourself, how to present the topic, how to make sure that you engage the people when it's your turn. But if you are orchestrating a group of experts, you have to be responsible in knowing how to ask appropriate questions, how to change the topic of conversation if it goes left field, how to rein in your experts, because if, for example, you have a panel discussion that's supposed to last only 45 minutes and you have one expert that is hogging all the time, you need to have the skills to take the mic away from that presenter, not hurting his feelings and not making it look unprofessional, and give it to someone else. Okay? These are skills that you need to learn if you're running a discussion panel webinar. A Q&A webinar, or Ask Me Anything, AMA webinar, this actually maximizes the involvement of the participants. Let's say I wanted to create a Q&A webinar with you today on the importance of feeding hummingbirds. And I say, well, today's topic is the importance of feeding hummingbirds for the benefit of the planet. Ask me anything. I'm guessing some of you would be taken aback by this topic, and some of you might not even have any questions for me because that's not exactly what I signed up for. Well, that's what I'm saying when I say know your audience, the first and most important tip. So if you are maximizing participants' engagement, you also need to be prepared for lack of the engagement. What do I do then? For example, having frequently asked questions prepared for your audience to kind of warm them up to the idea of asking questions. Not everybody wants to. The Q&As or the MAAs can be an expert, or it can be a panel of experts that answer these questions. These questions can be also received earlier via social media or online, like now via chat. If you guys have any questions, you're going to be able to have an element of Q&A at the end of this webinar. You need to know that you have the knowledge to answer the question your audience asks you. And then how do you find yourself in a difficult situation where you don't have the answer to that specific question, and you know that specific question is on topic? How do you react then? What do? You need to be prepared. Okay, so this is another element of running a webinars. Then we have an interview. An interview is least work involving for the person that is being interviewed, and a lot of work needs to be prepared for the person that is interviewing. Quite often, these webinars or online events where we interview a celebrity or a famous person or a person that is a very big expert in their field is a walk on a tightrope line. Because if we don't ask the appropriate question, or if we ask a question that is uninteresting to the audience because they can just Google it and they find it, then they have no benefit of staying with us a little bit longer. Okay. If we ask an inappropriate question, the interviewee, so the person being interviewed, can walk up and say, "Bye, I'm done." What happens if we invite, just like we invited all of you guys here today, and the interviewee doesn't come? How do we find ourselves then? So as a host of a webinar that is an interview-based webinar, you need to know what to do and how to do it and how to have a plan B and a backup plan, because your whole content of the webinar is really based on another person. And last but not least is this case study. If the purpose of your webinar is to promote a product, to have a service that you want to sell, then this is the format that you need to go with. Okay, so you're presenting a product, you're giving a tutorial, you're teaching people how to use it. I'm teaching you how to think about the concept of a webinar, okay? Giving you examples of my own. So if you look at the elements that I talked about today, you can see that at the very beginning, I had someone introduce me. So that one element was almost like an interview. They asked me a question, I was able to answer it. I'm the expert here, so we can see like this element of the interviewing was at the very, very beginning. But technically, I am a one presenter, so I'm going to be the one engaging you. I'm going to be the one talking with you. I'm the one that's going to be providing you expert knowledge on webinars. And last but not least, at the very, very end, we did provide a slot of time that we're going to use for Q&A. So a webinar can be a mix and match of these 6 elements. But that's not all, because I promised you 6 more. So let's continue. Before we continue, I forgot I had a question for you. Can you answer that? So if out of these, 1 presenter, 2 presenters, the interview style, the case study style, the panel discussion, and the Q&A, which webinars or webinars that you conduct or have seen are most interesting for you? So which ones do you conduct? All right, so case study and product demonstration. Okay. Awesome. If you guys want to share later on, that would be amazing as well. Workshops. Okay. Interesting to say, workshops are a different category of online work, not part of the webinar family. So if you're conducting workshops, good on you. There's a lot to learn about that. All right, Law. Thank you. All right, let's continue about the thematic elements now. Now, when we talk about webinars, I told you the 6 technical elements, and now let's talk about the theme. So the topic, the subjects that we are going to be discussing in the webinars. Again, there are 6 goals, 6 purposes of having a webinar. There's e-learning. So online platforms, different kind of, I'm not going to throw out names here, but different online platforms have webinars as a way of just popping in there on-demand learning. So we going in there know exactly that the knowledge is the element that we're going to get from them. Staff training, this is a way of using webinars, so almost like a lecture form of one or two presenters, most often, that teach staff to become better or more equipped in the work that they do. Okay. The third one would be product or service demonstration, case study, so to speak. Product and service demonstration is exactly what I'm doing right now. I am demonstrating to you a service of running a webinars and showing you how to structure your thoughts when it comes to running webinars. Customer care. Webinars quite often are used, and their main goal is to make sure that we care for the customers that we are serving. Okay. Corporate communication. You may have seen videos and webinars that have been released from corporations where they're teaching the clientele about a certain element of their business, or corporate communication where they're using webinars to increase morale and to motivate people to continue working very well for this company. Corporate communication has a completely different goal in mind than, for example, staff training or e-learning. And last but not least, image management. Quite often, events like summits, like webinars, like presentation in the online space are there to start promoting your image, start promoting your brand. Okay. So the thing that you are aiming for is giving people snippets of knowledge, but making sure that they're very much in line with understanding what your image is as a business and how you're managing it and how to position yourself in the field that you are working in. And the image management is going to create the know, like, trust factor that is crucial for online entrepreneurs. Okay. So what is e-learning? Like I mentioned, you can use many different platforms, from Moodle to Kajabi to Thinkific, and your knowledge is there. ClickMeetng also has e-learning. There are videos that you can watch on how to technically run, so tutorials, as well as how to organize yourself in the back end to be better. E-learning is nothing short of a mini university that you're going to in order to learn a specific topic. Okay. E-learning means that when I'm the e-learning presenter of the webinar, I need to know exactly what my goal is, what I'm teaching the people, and what are the deliverables at the very end. I cannot just sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of things that I know about webinars, but what do I start with? Let me see. What would be interesting? So if you're ever not sure what you want to teach your people, then most likely that is not the right time for you to teach, because you're not prepared. So with online learning, it's crucial to know exactly what you're teaching people and exactly the methods of teaching in order not to bore your people and not to kill your image. Okay. Remember a minute earlier, I said image management is important. Well, with e-learning, you need to also manage your image as the presenter or the expert in your field, should it be business or education. Next one, staff training. Quite often we forget that mobile learning, e-learning, and webinars, all of these are elements of a staff training. They can be very beneficial. The only thing that right now is a pitfall for the education industry is that staff training is quite often treated as edutainment. So a lot of entertainment and only a little bit of education, which we want to move away from with the evidence-based of learning, because entertainment is something that we can find on-demand TV shows, and education is something where you actually need to put in a little bit of work to learn. Product and service demonstrations. If you have signed up here for today's workshop, let's say, and I was to teach you everything about running ClickMeetng at the back end. So how do I prepare a presentation? How do I upload a presentation? How do I work with the presentation? How do I, for example, take different markers and make sure that I know how to draw on these presentations? Okay. If I need to do any of those things, and I need to show you and demonstrate it, this way of setting up the webinar is not a good one, because you don't see the back end. You don't see what I've just done. You can't see what things I had to click in order to be able to draw this magnificent heart of mine. Okay, so again, from a technical element, if there is a product that you're demonstrating, you need to understand what the visual is going to be from the client's perspective. If you're demonstrating a product like cream, you need to know exactly what's it for. What are the ingredients to show the people? Things like creams and cosmetics are very hard to demonstrate online, because in the real world, people like to take the cream, put it on their hands, smell it, touch it. They don't have any of those senses. Therefore, how do we demonstrate a product that works on senses? The texture, the effect, the silkiness, the smell online, which is blind to all of these senses. That is our goal, to make sure that we know how to do it. If we're talking about smells, then let's show the pictures of what they will be smelling. Draw a picture, use storytelling to show the people and tell them exactly what they're getting. Make sure that you understand the before and after pictures of what is happening with the texture, the silkiness, for example, of the cream on their hands. Make sure that they see a visual to almost imagine themselves touching the cream. So product, service, and demonstration would be much different than what I'm showing you today. I'm being very technical because this is a technical element of the webinar. Nothing compared to drawing a picture of a beautiful product that you're going to be using. In order for you to use a webinar to demonstrate a product, you need to be very knowledgeable about the technicalities of the product. You need to know how to show it to your people so they buy it, quote unquote, buy it as an idea, and then open their wallets to physically buy something. And most importantly, you need to give them almost a story for them to remember you buy this product. So even if they don't purchase it today, they're like, you know what? She was awesome talking about cream. Now my cream is almost finished. I need to go back to her to see what cream she was talking about, because you might not really remember the name of the cream, but you will remember the person who sold you the concept and the idea, and you will go back to them. So product and demonstration is a very important skill to have, especially if you are an online entrepreneur in this field. Customer care. Quite often we forget that the customers that we could now have are the customers that are most important and cost us the least money to maintain, retain, and to get more out of them. So it is only smart to make sure that the webinars that you are creating in your business also apply to the customers that you currently have. Let's imagine that ClickMeetng as a company would only make webinars for people who they want to invite to their business. Okay, so people who technically they want to come and give me your money, I will give you an amazing product to use. And that's it. Then you're left on your own, my friend. Good luck with you. Well, a lot of the people would get upset because I trusted you that if I paid you for the subscription, that you would teach me how to do this and make it beneficial for my business. Yes, you gave me a platform, but there's no education. Therefore, customer care really is not existent. Thank goodness ClickMeetng doesn't do that. It creates a whole platform of customer care to make sure that you have everything you need, from videos to blogs to articles to live events to even on-demand lessons of how to do something technically as well as thematically, making sure that the subject is there to also help you. Not only what to click to run a good webinar, but how to prepare it, for example. So customer care is crucial. in the webinar industry. Corporate communication. If you are in the corporate world, corporate communication quite often is like I said, a morale building element. If you know how to build people's morale with the webinar that you are running, then most likely the webinar is going to be very successful. If the way that you're running a webinar is very demotivating, let's just say the least, then most likely it will just create the opposite effect that you were aiming for. Instead of making sure that your people are happy to work with in your corporation, they will be frustrated with it. Instead of listening to you, they will mock you. Instead of making sure that they are engaged and almost treating the corporation as a second family that they have, they will be detached from it emotionally. Okay, so corporate communication is crucial because most likely the people in the bottom layer of the corporation don't have immediate access to the founders, the ones that have the vision, have the mission, have a drive. They're the ones that had an idea and they were able to expand on that idea to build a huge corporation. How do we almost get this vision and this mission contagious throughout the whole corporation when there are thousands of people? Webinars. If you know how to do them well, webinars will answer all of those questions, because the CEO of Apple, for example, can't go and talk to every single person who is creating Apple computers, but they can record an amazing webinar to do that for them. And that webinar is going to be delivered right to the doorstep of these people. By doorstep, I mean keyboard. Okay, so they click play and they're there. They're there and they're being sold a story and they're being inspired by the mission and the vision. That is what corporate communication is all about with webinars. And last but not least, image management. Personal branding, if you don't have one, I advise you to start looking into it, making sure that you as a business or a educational field professor know exactly how to create the know, like, trust factor. What is that? 2 words about that. In order for people to listen to you, to buy from you, to learn from you, they need to know you. So first of all, you need to exist in their sphere of, yeah, I heard about this person. Yeah, I know something about this and this company, if it is a company image, or I know something about this person. People sell. People to people is the best way to sell your knowledge or your product. So therefore, it would be wise for you to have an image that you want to convey. Let's say I have a social account, and on that social account, the only thing that you see are my holiday photos and my family and my dog and my cat and my rat. Okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm here trying to sell you the idea of being an expert in webinars. And you're like, oh, let me Google her. And then you're like, well, how do I know she even is an expert in the field that she is talking about? Because there is no brand image. And the webinars, they can be paid, they can be free, they can be long, they can be shorter, but they will help people know you. Then once they also converted, so bought into the idea of spending time with you, they need to like you. So I'm doing everything I can in my power of running a webinar to make sure that you like me and you like the way I speak and you like the way of me selling you on the idea of webinars are amazing, but you need to do you need to know what you're doing in order to make sure that they're engaging. Therefore, if you like me, then most likely you will trust me in order to do what I ask you to do at the end. Email me, buy something from me, learn something from me, implement a dietary tip that I'm giving you. Whatever the call to action is later on, if I have not created the know, like, trust factor with you, most likely my call to action will be ineffective. So webinars are great image management. A lot of people have in the past 2-3 years abused the term of showing up online and sharing their knowledge, and the amount of rubbish there is out there of people, hey, I just popped in here to share with you my thought of the day. I had bacon and eggs and oh my God, they were delicious. Yeah, that's just online image junk. But when we're talking about image management, it needs to be specific, it needs to be strategic, and it needs to have a plan in order for the webinar or the online meeting that you are running with people to be effective. We'll go to that in a few minutes. So why are we really separating these two divisions, the technical and the thematical? Well, because I want you to envision it almost as going on some kind of a trip from point A to point B. I say some kind, not being specific. Bear with me, I'll try to explain it to you. Imagine you have a row of cars to choose from the small to the huge to the fast to the extremely fast, extremely expensive. Okay. And then you're like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it doesn't matter what I choose. Let's go with this one. And you're going to choose a Porsche, the smallest Porsche possible. I know nothing about cars, but the 2-people Porsche. Okay. And you're like, yep, that's the one that I want. Color doesn't matter. I know it's fast. That's what I want. It's a cool car. That's exactly what I need. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, the audience that's supposed to go with me in that car can't necessarily fit because I have a family of 5 and a dog. So is a Porsche the technical definition of a certain webinar really good for me? I'd say no. Not for the people that I'm trying to transport. So not for my audience. If it is a 2-person's car and I have 6 in total, 5 plus dog, to put in there, it ain't happening. It's not going to work. It's not going to help me drive my audience somewhere. And then let's imagine the theme. So the road that we are going to be driving on is Sahara Desert. Well, people drive their cars in the Sahara Desert, but they're generally Jeeps, like off-road huge Jeeps with big wheels. This Porsche, who cares that it's expensive, is not going to survive on the Sahara Desert. Okay? So make sure that you know exactly what you're doing with the webinars. So if you want to run a webinar by yourself, so one presenter, but you want it to be in an MAA, so ask me anything session, and you want to have a demonstration of a product and service. Okay, I have cream. I want to sell you on this cream, and I want it to be ask me anything about the cream. My goal is to sell you the cream. All right, go. Ask me questions. You can ask me anything. I'm going to be very professional. I'm going to smile. I'm going to tell you, you can ask me anything about this amazing cream. We have an hour and a half for you to ask me anything. I guarantee after 5 minutes, you guys are going to say, well, I don't have any more questions. Why do I feel that I'm kind of pulling teeth asking this presenter? I thought this presenter was here to sell me on the idea of this cream as opposed to me trying to ask them questions. They don't seem professional. They don't seem prepared. See? Because the vehicle doesn't match the road. Okay? But where I am right now, my vehicle is one presenter webinar where I'm selling you on the idea of webinars. I am not teaching you how to run the webinars. I am not telling you how to engage the people. I am not showing you how to prepare your mini studio at home in order to look good in the webinar. I'm teaching you the concept of webinars and why it's important to know this tool, because it is something that will get you from point A to B in your online entrepreneurship or education if you know exactly where you're going, what you're doing, and with whom. So I have mixed and matched what I need specifically for the audience that I have. Okay, so let's move forward. When to use webinars in your business or your educational endeavor. Like I said, not everyone is ready, or your audience may be not ready. So one or the other will not fit just yet. So we need to prepare. We use webinars in our business when the business wants to build their content library. So, for example, This webinar is recorded, which means this webinar will be part of the content library of ClickMeetng. People later on, not only you guys being here, but people in the future, in a month, in 2, in 3 years, this knowledge will still be valid. And this content in the library of the company will still be up to date. And so therefore, the company running this webinar is technically creating their content. Now, let's imagine they did not prepare very well. And yes, they ordered me as a presenter. Yes, I prepared the presentation. I prepared what I want to tell you. But I said, I'm not allowing you to record it. Whoever comes, and that's it. Are we prepared well for content creation for a webinar? Not really. So all elements need to click, okay? Running a webinar, if you are ready to position yourself as an educational expert or as an online entrepreneur, as a resource to your clients, then you're ready to run a webinar. If you say, I can sell anything to anyone, come to me, most likely people won't. Because people want to speak to the person that specifically solves their problem. I am an expert in selling creams for the beauty industry for women 40 up. Oh, okay. I know who to go to because that woman speaks my language. That's exactly what I need. I am an expert in oil change in top cars, fast cars for Formula One. Then these people will treat me as a resource because they know exactly what I'm selling to them, and I have the knowledge specific to the niche. So when you want to position your company as a resource, you need to know who you are a resource for, with what topic: knowledge, service, or product based. Okay, webinars are there to drive engagement, meaning when you're conducting webinars, you have a group of people prepared to service the oncoming traffic. Okay, now there's a group of us here. We have engagement. You guys are here. You're listening to me. You're asking questions. I can see questions being popped up. What am I doing? We're driving engagement in the topic, and we're driving engagement for ClickMeetng as a webinar platform. Now imagine at the end we'll say, yeah, and by the way, thanks so much, goodbye. And that's it. We have just lost all of the work of driving the engagement to our brand, and we have done nothing following. So a webinar is not the end of your journey. A webinar should be a planned beginning of your journey. What are you going to later do with the audience that you drove to you? Do you have a website? Do you have a platform? Do you have a way of contacting them, or they have a way of contacting you? Where can they find you? How easy it is to find you? Do you have an email sequence series to sell, nurture, or give whatever you want to give to your people? And if you're selling, how are you selling? Okay, I have cream. Who wants to buy it? And let's say 3 people lift their hands. Yeah, I don't know how to send it to Greece, so sorry. That's a waste of time. If you're driving engagement, there needs to be a purpose, because webinars, if they are run correctly, if people listen to what you're selling, most likely they are now becoming high quality leads. Webinars are almost like a sift. Remember how I said know your audience at the very beginning, and make sure that in the topic of the webinar, you include who this is for. The webinar will sift some of the people. Some people pop in, some people pop out. Don't take it personally. They have just sifted themselves and saying, yeah, that's not for me. Not because you're bad as a presenter, although that can also be a possibility. So work on yourself should you need to. But most likely, if you know you've done everything to prepare well and you're a good enough presenter to run a webinar, then these people are not your people. A, you may talk too fast. B, you may be a woman and they don't listen to women in the motor industry, so you need to sell yourself better because the no like trust factor is not working there. The topic just doesn't concern them. Oh, for education, yeah, sorry, I thought you were going to be talking about running lectures for children in preschool. this is not the topic. So sorry, but this is not for you. Yes, you may have bits and pieces, but as a whole, this is not for you. We're rather talking about online entrepreneurs and education, selling education, rather than running workshops with preschoolers. So webinars really sift through the leads that you drive, creating at the end of the webinar high quality leads. And these high quality leads don't necessarily mean that these people are going to give you millions of dollars, but it means that these people can become something that your company needs. They can be advocates. Hey, listen, I was in an awesome webinar with a girl talking about webinars. I'm going to get a link from that company. I want you to listen to her. Like, the things that she says were amazing, and I think we can implement them in our business. What does that happen? Word of mouth. You give the video to someone else. ClickMeetng delivered the video to you. That person says, yeah, ClickMeetng is an awesome content library. They positioned themselves for resources. And therefore, because the quality leads had word of mouth, they're driving even more engagement. And further down the line, most likely, hey, we're all in business for money. We got to pay our bills. Sometimes there is going to be a financial transaction as well. So someone will purchase something. Okay, so make sure that you understand that webinars are a tool, a versatile tool, a pick your own adventure, pick it wisely, that will essentially build your content, so your knowledge, you as a resource. People will come back to you. They will drive strategic engagement if you know what to do with these people. And last but not least, they are a sift to make sure that you have high quality leads that will convert. By convert, I mean word of mouth, advertisement, purchasing, or being an advocate. Yeah, you know what? I can't afford that cream because it's $2,000 per tube. However, oh my goodness, the results that it's promising, you look 10 years younger, right? Let's say that person is starting to be an advocate of your product without really using your product because the way that the webinar sold the product was amazing. Or with knowledge. You know what? I just found this awesome girl online who I went to her webinar, and the way she motivates me to get up from the sofa and to exercise and to be fit and ready, not necessarily beach ready because not everyone wants a six pack, but like at least move yourself in order to be healthy. Yeah, come check her out. See? You are creating as people, audience, you're creating this buzz because of a well-run webinar. Okay, let's move forward. So can webinars be an effective selling tactic? Yes, I guarantee that they can. And here are the numbers. Okay, 72% people from recent research prefer to watch a video over reading text. If you don't believe me, take your phone. I believe you have a smartphone. And if you don't, go online. Look at Instagram, look at Facebook, look at TikTok. Most of them are video promoting, reels promoting, short videos promoting. If you don't believe me, people don't have time to read right now. So they even have enactments of books in order to watch the video of a book, almost like an audiobook, but with voices and characters. Okay. People now, even companies like Netflix recently introduced short stories. They don't necessarily have the full 2-3 hours shows and series, but snippets of them. Why? Because they realized people sometimes don't have time to watch the whole thing. There is a meme going on. You know what? Netflix is very expensive for the 45 minutes that I sit there trying to choose a film, and they're like, whatever, I'm not watching anything. So what did they do? They took the habits of their audience and changed it into something that will bring them benefit. Short snippets of shows called short stories on Netflix. Why? Because 72% of people prefer to watch short videos over reading. Okay? 30% of webinar attendees turn into qualified leads. So 30% of you in the long run will convert. Not necessarily financially, but like I mentioned, for example, through word of mouth or as a return client to the knowledge database that we have. 30%. That's very high. That is much, much higher because conversion rates of Facebook ads are generally 1.6 from my understanding. I'm not a Facebook ad expert. I'm just repeating what someone else said that is an expert in the field. So 1.2% versus 30%, that's pretty high. Okay. Webinars can be successful if you solve a problem to the people that have come to you with a problem. Effective webinars in the online space of business and entrepreneurship, right? And education. So what problem am I solving? I'm telling you that webinars can be effective. I'm asking you to prepare for them well, to know what you're doing. Why? Because then you will return to us to know more about it. And maybe you're like, okay, so how do I prepare? Well, there's a whole resource library that I can direct you to on the platform, right? Because we're solving problems that you have, making it sure that you know us, like us, trust us, and buy from us, not necessarily financially. When I say buy, remember, when we give you knowledge like a video, you buying means you're spending your time watching it. That is an amazing conversion as well. 5% of people that you have on your webinars most likely will make a purchase of the service or the product within 48 hours. If they don't, they need to go into a nurture sequence. So your job when you're running a webinar is to know that the most crucial time is the webinar itself and the 48 hours after the webinar. 5% of people most likely will buy there. Why? Because you're going to give them a code that is only valid 48 hours, or because they're going to be so motivated and so fired up to buy this pen that you're selling them that is going to help them write calligraphy easily. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what I need. And most importantly, a successful webinar will create the basis of the know, like, trust factor, which is crucial in the online space. Okay, I already talked about what it is, so I won't explain it once again. But remember, without the know, like, trust factor, you're nothing, as I am nothing in the online space. So make sure that you are people are able to find you, that you are likable, and that you create trust. Because why is this trust important? The topic of the webinar and the way that it's being delivered needs to solve the problem that the people came to you to solve and for a solution. If you don't deliver on a webinar, they won't trust you. Let's imagine you came here and the topic of the webinar is effective usage of webinars in today's world of online entrepreneurship and education. And I sit there and I just say, yeah, webinars are interesting. A lot of people use them. A lot of people mistake them for something else. But yeah, I believe they are very effective. So I really don't know what to tell you. Do you have any questions? Most likely. Yeah, you know me. You're not going to like me very much. I didn't deliver anything, so you're not going to trust me. So the know, like, trust factor is just not there. Malva, you have not put in the work in order to make this webinar successful. Therefore, it won't be successful for the people that are listening. Okay, let's continue. Then, if we know that these are all the things I need to take under consideration, then how to prepare for a webinar? Well, first and foremost, the first things first, prep is key. Okay. You need to be prepared well. Like I mentioned, however you're running a webinar, the legal aspect of a webinar needs to be taken care of. Either the contract, if you have an interviewer, if you're the interviewer, if you have a panel, you need to make sure that the things that you're preparing, like this picture. I did not take this picture, but I'm using this picture. Do I have the rights to use this picture? This is the prep work for a webinar. I cannot just download any picture off the internet and use it for my webinar and broadcast it over the world. I can get into a lot of trouble. So you need to make sure that the pictures that you use in your webinars are legally usable for you. You need to also prepare the content of the webinar, the presentation of the webinar, making sure that the presentation is online friendly, that the presentation content is structured in a way, that the presentation structure is done in such a way that it's good for both live and recorded. Okay. You need to prepare the content of a webinar, when to ask questions, when to engage people, when to see that, you know what you're saying is not necessarily hitting a home run with the people. Okay. And how to do that. Then what happens right at the end of a webinar? When do you transition from an educational or a presentational webinar to a sales element? Because some webinars are sales prone, or this is their role. I'm giving you some free knowledge, and at the end I'm going to sell you something, or potentially sell you something, because I want to make money, right? So what are you selling? Do you have a way of selling that? And then the webinar, it doesn't end there. Make sure that after the webinar, you are going to nurture your people with email sequences that will not frustrate them, because they won't trust you anymore to come again, and they will just unsubscribe, and you're like, oh, you're just too much. Okay. How do you make sure that you take care of them? So the customer care after the webinar is also important. And all these things have to be done before you even start marketing your webinar. How do you market your webinar to your potential clients or to your potential students? How do they know where to reach you? How do they know where to come? When do you send them the links? Okay. And most importantly, how do you take care of them during the webinar? So prep is key. How to structure a webinar, because webinars is what we're talking about. We're not talking about marketing and email sequences. Well, not today. So the structure has a few points that I want you to take into consideration. The introduction has to be compelling. Okay, by compelling, I mean the way that you're speaking needs to be clear. It should not have any, I call them language flowers, because a lot of people call them thinking pains, and I don't like the word pain in this context, so I call them little flowers. These flowers are, I got things to say, yeah, please don't, especially online, especially when you've got a microphone. All these mouth noises, thinking pains, language flowers are the things that are going to irritate your people, especially at the very beginning. If the introduction to the topic is not very compelling, not very engaging, you don't believe in what you're selling to the people, be it knowledge or product, most likely they won't believe you either. If I say, okay, today's topic is going to be about the effective usage of webinars. It doesn't matter if today or tomorrow, for everyone. I guarantee you this one sentence of 30 seconds that just lasted was painful to your ears. Number one, you didn't have the conviction that this trainer or this webinar presenter knows exactly what they're doing. You didn't have conviction that, do I really want to stay here for another hour and a half and try to listen to this person that really doesn't know what they're talking about? Because that's exactly how they seem, because the stress is eating them alive. So the introduction of the topic and yourself is not, if it's not compelling, you're losing people off the bat. Not the webinar's fault. Let's look in the mirror. It's the presenter's fault. Okay. So the introduction has to be compelling. My advice to people starting out is to write out word for word, almost like a teleprompter, the introduction. If you don't write it out word for word, and if you don't read it, most likely you will trip at the very, very beginning. So this is another tip for you. Compelling introduction ought to be written out if you're beginning. The order of the main points needs to be addressed. In other words, if I have advertised my webinar and I have told you that these are the deliverables, the things that I am going to deliver during the hour and a half that we're together, because you're paying me with your time, okay? I'm trying to buy your time with the knowledge that I'm giving you. So if I'm promising you an outcome, these are the elements that you are going to get from me. Make sure that you address them at the very beginning. Make sure that you give your solutions to the people. So what is their problem? What is your solution? What is their problem? What is your solution? Webinars are complicated. Then how do I structure them? Webinars are just A meeting? Well, no, it's not. So find a solution. What is it not? Then follow through with the promises made. If you follow through with the promises made, the trust factor is going to be there. So make sure that that is implemented and weave through your whole webinar structure. Make sure that you remember, if you are running a sales prone webinar, that the ratio is 80-20, which means 80% of the time you ought to be spending on giving people the promised outcome of the webinar. What got them here? What drew them to you? Make sure you deliver on that. And only 20% of that whole time should be sales driven if you're running a sales webinar, or action driven if you're running an educational webinar. Okay, a webinar is not a workshop. It's not only an online lecture, it also requires engagement from the people. So the 80-20 rule means 80% of the time you're giving people what they came for, and 20% of the time you're either selling or asking them to do something. So selling them on the task that they need to do. The word sell doesn't necessarily mean monetary exchange, just a reminder. Okay, so people are like, yeah, I don't sell anything. You're selling yourself, you're selling your knowledge, you're selling the idea of people having to do something. Why is this important? Like I mentioned, webinars have to give value. If you don't give value, how can they trust you that if they purchase from you, they're going to get a valuable product? Number one. And number two, the key skill is to find the transition and how to do a full and smooth transition between I'm sharing my knowledge, I'm an amazing expert, to now I want something from you. I want something from you may mean, for example, hey guys, should you have any questions about webinars, I'm more than happy to answer any of them. Please write in the chat below. This is a transition of me now wanting something from you, for example. Now, you ought to have a motivating close. You should motivate people to the concept of the webinar topic. Meaning, at the end of the webinar, people should feel energized about the topic that you are presenting. If you're presenting a diet or an exercise application, people should feel, that is exactly what I need. I loved it. I'm motivated to do something. To do something means a call to action, okay? Should you wish to purchase this microphone that I am using today, you can go here. Give them a link. You know what? Now we have a promotion. Here's your promotional code. You can go and purchase something else. Or, you know what, guys? Now your homework after today's webinar is XYZ. Okay, so the relevant call to action needs to be a call to action associated to the webinar topic. If the webinar topic is webinars, and then I say, and if you guys want to buy the cream that I'm talking about, this is the link, you're going to be like, yeah, well, you mentioned the cream like 2 or 3 times, but I don't even know if I want to buy it because you never said anything about it, right? So the word relevant is key. There needs to be a correlation between the topic of the webinar, the idea that you're selling throughout the whole webinar, to the last bit of what you want from people, which is a relevant call to action. Now, what to do after the webinar to nurture your clients or students? Well, you need to make sure that the webinar is not the last piece of the puzzle. If the webinar is the last piece of the puzzle, go back to the drawing board and start again, okay? Your first webinar, especially if it's an educational or sales-driven webinar, so entrepreneurial business, will not be a success, financially speaking, okay? Like I mentioned, the conversion ratio is everything from the amount of money spent on ads or the amount of effort spent on organic marketing. The first conversion is how many people landed on your registration page, how many people scrolled down to read your description, how many people signed up. That's your second conversion. How many people actually showed up to the live section. That's your third conversion. How many people stayed till the end? That's your fourth conversion. How many people later watched the recording? That's your fifth conversion. How many people read the offer, whatever the offer may be, if it is a sales offer, or how many people had done their homework? That is your next conversion. How many people purchased in the long run? That's your next conversion. There are so many conversions. How many people open the email sequence? That is your next conversion. So making sure that success is measured on all fields. And how do we nurture our students? Well, you need to make sure that the email sequence that follows a webinar has to include at least these 4 emails. The first email needs to be an awareness. Okay, so what will happen is in the industry says around 20 to 25% of the people that register to a webinar actually come to the live show. Okay, which means you still have around 75% of people that you have contact to that did not come for many reasons. I signed up because it was interesting and then forgot. I signed up, it was interesting, but then the cat ran out of the house and I need to chase them. I signed up and then there was no electricity. Oops, right? So you have 75% of people who already in the first conversion, so the sign up conversion, showed you that they're very interested in the topic, but they lost their way and they did not come live. Again, don't take it personally. These are standard industry statistics. So you need to make them aware. Guys, thank you so much for signing up for the webinar. We are excited about what Malva had taught us about webinars. I understand life sometimes gets in the way. Don't worry. We are going to send you a recording as soon as it's ready. In the meantime, these are one of the quotes that Malva has used. Okay, keep an eye out for the next email. Awareness. After the webinar, people need to be aware that it happened. Interest. The next one should be interest. You know what? The webinar that Malva has done on running webinars was gathering a lot of interest from the people. These are some of the feedback comments that we got from it. If you'd like to watch it, it's over here. So we're converting once again the 75% to go and watch the webinar that is recorded to, of course, their convenience. These are conversions of our actions. Okay, so generate interest in the second email. Now, in the third email, generate a desire. Okay, people come to your webinar to solve a problem. You promised them an outcome that they will know about. That doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to do it, but they know that there is a solution to it. I've got wrinkles, cream. I don't have good audio, microphone. I'm scared that traveling is going to be very expensive if there's an accident, travel insurance. Okay, they know, but they don't have it. So in the third email sequence, it's quite interesting to create a desire. They're aware, they're interested, but now they should desire your product. Make sure that the words and the way that you're structuring the email sequence after the webinar should create a desire. I want to feel like that. I want to have that safety. I want to have that product. I want to have that knowledge. I want to have that skill. The fact that you listened to something once, like you listened to this webinar once, doesn't mean you have this presenter skills to do the same thing. Doesn't mean you remember everything that I said. And I said a lot more than is shown just on the presentation itself. So you're creating a desire that the people are like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I need. And your last email should be an action-driven email. Excuse me, an action-driven email, which means, you know what? If you're ready to, for example, attend another webinar, that's going to be a paid webinar, you're more than welcome to come here. Or if you're ready to purchase the insurance, this is where you go. If you're ready to purchase a platform, like a webinar platform, this is what you do, right? So creating this email sequence is going to be exactly what your people are going to want. All right. My mission for today's meeting was to help entrepreneurs and educators fall in love with the concept of webinars, that webinars are great. They're very technical. They're amazing tools for business, and they do offer a lot of conversion that you are able to sell your knowledge, your business, your service in the online space. I hope I had done that. Should you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me. Should you guys have any questions now, I'm more than happy to answer them. I already have one question from Steve, so I'm going to go on and read it to get you guys started. What do you recommend to have a moderated chat or open chat to attendees? Well, that's a very good question, and it depends on the technicalities of your webinar. Should you want your presenter to present the lecture that they have prepared without distractions, and then you inform the people that there's a Q&A at the end, then yes, have a moderated chat, because not all presenters have a poker face. So whenever they see a question popping up or a sentence or a comment popping up in the chat, they get thrown off their train of thought and they don't know what to do. Should I read what's in the chat? Should I say it out loud? Because when you guys are writing something in the chat, I personally can see it, you guys don't. And so all of a sudden, let's say I read a wrong comment once saying, yeah, by the way, whatever you're saying is not smart. Then I'm going to freeze and I'm going to say, and then I'm going to try to continue. But to the people that are watching me, they're like, what happened to her? Because they don't know if something's wrong, if, a tree fell off, if there is a car crash, if internet just kind of froze. You don't know what's happening to the presenter side. So depending on how you trust yourself as a presenter and how you trust your audience. The second element is if you're running a Q&A and you have a moderated chat, it is going to be very difficult for you to get the momentum going of people asking questions. Okay, so again, what kind of webinar are you running? If it's an Ask Me Anything webinar, make sure that the people have easy access to you. If it is a webinar that it's just supposed to be automated, because that's the next question, when to use automated webinars. If webinars are supposed to be automated, you need to know that the questions in the webinars should be applicable to everyone watching the recording, okay? And sometimes webinars are called, there's a genre of webinars that are called webcasts, which means you, as a presenter, you record a live webinar with an audience, but you do it in such a way that the people that are also watching it have the possibility to engage in the chat as well when they're watching the on demand, and they almost are tricked into believing that they're in the live session. Okay, so again, that is another set of skills to make sure that you know how to ask questions, make sure that you know how to read the answers to the audience, and you make sure that you engage even those that are watching on demand. Automated webinars need to be very specific. You cannot create automated webinars that are in-house audience concentrated, because the people that are watching the automated webinar are not interested in the other audience that have been in there. Unfortunately, if we like it or not, we as humans are egocentric. So we want our problems solved. We want our questions answered, not necessarily interested in other people's redundant questions. Sometimes other people's questions are interesting as well, but not always. So if you are running automated webinars, they're a great idea, but you have to have the skills to do so if you're encouraging engagement. If you're not encouraging engagement, you need to have the skills to be an amazing presenter, not to bore the people. Okay, because automated means I can turn it on and turn it off. Okay, and I don't want you guys to take it personally when I say people sometimes don't watch our webinars, or they only watch the first 15 minutes and then jump forward, because it's like saying that every time, and I'm so guilty of this, every time you fell asleep while watching a show at home, then all the actors should take offense that they did not do a good job. No, this just means that everything that is recorded has a lower motivating factor to finish, because it's recorded. I can always go back. The fact that I go back or I don't is a different story, but in our head, it's always there. It's accessible. So people won't value it as much as, for example, a live concert. All right, let's see if there are any more questions. How to find a good topic for the webinar? Well, that's an amazing question, Jane. So quite often in the non-online world, what happened, people created products, like boxed products of knowledge, like a book, for example, and then they tried to find the audience to sell it to. Or there was a university program, and then the university tried to recruit students. In the online space, it's rather the other way around. Knowing your audience, knowing who you're serving, specifically who you are going to talk to and what solution you're offering to them, is going to determine the topic of your webinar. So in the topic of the webinar, you need to include who it's for, what problem does it solve, and anything that is relevant to the people. Like, for example, our topic was effective usage. Okay, so I need to use the webinar effectively. All right. In today's world. Okay, so today's world is a little bit different than it was a few years ago. For whom? For online entrepreneurs and education. Okay, which means specifically that we're talking about using webinars, not how to do it, but how to use them in the business of today's world, which is very specific because it's online space centric, especially with webinars, because they are web seminars and they are for online entrepreneurs and education. If your topic is like so, answers a question, solves a problem, and is specific to the people, it will be a good topic. I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. Okay? Neither should you feel that you are, but I know who I'm for. I'm amazing for education, for people in the education industry. I'm amazing for online entrepreneurs, and I'm great for corporations. So these are the three avatars. So these are the three people that I work with, the three kinds of people that I work with. But mind you, today's topic had nothing to do with corporation. Yes, there was a tiny bit about corporations because these were the elements of a webinar that I just touched upon, but I didn't teach you how to create a webinar, how to deliver it to other people when they're in the corporation, right? Because that wasn't the topic. So finding a good topic means you know your audience, you know their pain points, you know what they want, and you're delivering at least a sample of a solution for them. All right, do we have another question? There we go. Okay, when you run an automated webinar, will it be good to tell people that this is an automated webinar and tell them to ask questions at any time via email, because there will be no one who answers their questions in the chat? And for me, unanswered question is the worst case. Yes. All right, Christian, love it. Yes. A webinar attendee that leaves with an unanswered question from your webinar is a very big loss. Okay, so I agree with you 100% that an unanswered question is the worst case scenario. There are ways of doing that, of tricking people into believing that an automated webinar is not an automated webinar. And I'm not saying lie to them. Don't say, hey, welcome live to my show, because that's not true. It's like watching the report live of New Year's Eve at the end of January. Everybody knows it's not live. Everybody knows that it was recorded. Do they choose to watch it? Yeah. Do they have anything against the presenters that count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year? No, because they know that it's recorded. So don't lie to people that your automated webinar is not automated and it's live. But make sure that you have the backup to answer any questions. Even though our webinar today was live, I understand that some of you had to leave. I understand that some of you were too shy to ask a question, or some of you will only, oh man, I should have asked a question like 5 minutes after webinar is finished. And I told you, you can always write to me and ask me a question later on. Why? Because I'm giving you a possibility. You can do that through, let's say, the comment section on the landing page that you put the webinar, or YouTube video allows you to do that as well. There's a comment section down below. You can tell the people to email you. You can tell the people, you know what, ask me anything. All these questions that are going to be in the chat are going to be answered by me on every Friday. Tell them that the webinar runs from Monday to Thursday, and on Friday, on a frequently asked landing page, questions are where they're going to find their answers. Sometimes, especially if you're running the same webinar for a longer period of time, the questions will be repetitive, and therefore the frequently asked questions page is going to be a gold resource to your people. Remember how I said that one of the reasons to run a webinar is to make you the resource of the industry as an industry expert? The Q&A will be exactly that, because sometimes you'll find people, oh my goodness, thank goodness someone asked that question. Now I have the answer. I didn't even think of asking that. Okay, so you need to have questions answered. If by any means another question pops up and I don't know the answer, I can say, you know what, Christian, that is a great question. I want to make sure that I give you all of the research and the statistics that you're asking for. How about I direct you to our landing page where the blog is going to be from this webinar? I'll make sure to include a paragraph there about your specific question. That way, you're postponing the answer to the question and you have no idea or you don't have it on hand, and yet you're still not leaving questions unanswered. I hope that that answered your question. Let's see if there's another one. Do you have another question, or are we done? I think we're done.
We are done.
Yay!
There aren't any question left. So I think it's a good time for the last part of our webinar. And I promised you to present the discount code. So this is what I'm going to do right now. Sorry. And excuse me. Patience, sorry.
The discount code is right here, guys. It's in the chat down below.
Yeah.
Sorry. And what we're going to do is we're going to show it to you right here. There we go. All right. So
thank you for a helping hand.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Just use this code while purchasing any of ClickMeetng accounts, and you'll get 10% off regular price. So I think it's a decent deal. Yeah. So Malva, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. The webinar was very informative as usual. And yeah, I think it's not only my opinion, but also the attendees. And yeah, so we're coming to the end.
Let's do this. What I would love if you guys, the ones that are here, if you can leave me like a sentence or two about your experience with this webinar, your feedback, what you loved, what you think you were missing but you wanted, maybe I can work on that as well. So any feedback that you guys have is going to be great for me and for the future of our cooperation to help you guys out. If you have a moment, please write it down so that I can read it. And I really appreciate all of you taking the time to watching this, either here live with me or watching the recording. Again, remember, we're here to serve you. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining our webinar today, and look forward to more ClickMeetng webinars. So keep an eye on our social media channels and our blog, of course, and you will find there information about upcoming events. And yeah, see you on ClickMeetng.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.